Ukraine President Zelensky made an impassioned appeal to Congress to impose a no-fly zone over Ukraine, kind of up the American and Western and NATO involvement in the war. And he was very well received, kind of a standing ovation, not just the Democrats, a fair number of Republicans as well. And Zelensky was pretty shrewd. He kind of tapped all the right chords. He invoked 9/11, Pearl Harbor, quoted Martin Luther King. And after it was over, the Biden policy toward Ukraine appeared to be, well, pretty much the same. And so you had this specter of reporters, these kind of metrosexual reporters, calling on Biden to do more. And one of the kind of consistent themes is, well, Zelensky knows what's good for his country. Why aren't you just doing what he says? Doesn't he understand the situation on the ground better? Isn't he the world's expert, so to speak, on Ukraine? And of course, the presumptive answer to that question is, yes, he is. But that's really not the question before us. Obviously, he knows what he needs. He knows what he wants. He knows what's good for his country. But this might be a little different from what we need. It might be a little different from what we can afford. It might be different from what we are prepared to do or what's good for our country. In other words, it is up to us to assess the level of commitment that we want to make and also the risks that we want to take. Now, I think that attempting to enforce a no-fly zone in that remote part of the world is a very dangerous thing to do. I'm not saying necessarily that it would automatically provoke World War III. There's no such thing as automatically in these situations. And I would actually like to see more open debate about these issues, which we don't see all that much. What we get are these kind of social media jibes. Here's one by a guy on the left who goes, "What's all this about these World War III hysterics?" He goes, "Russia can't even win a war against a neighboring country which has half the GDP of Miami. What makes you think the Russian army is any good is the basic point over here." But of course, this is a strange thing to say when the United States just proved that it can't win a war against a country that has, 1/50th the GDP of Miami, namely Afghanistan, can't beat a bunch of peasant herdsmen. If you can't do that, you should not be too arrogant about your ability to conduct a remote operation in a faraway part of the world. Essentially, what Zelensky, I think, is asking is for the United States to sort of do Iraq all over again. And in fact, even in Iraq, there were no risks of nuclear confrontation or nuclear escalation as there are now. I think we also need to review the domestic situation in this country because it is not like anything we've seen before, at least not in the time I've been in this country. I put out a poll on social media that went just like this. Who's a bigger threat to your life, your security, your freedom, your family's prosperity, your children's future? And then I just put Putin or Biden. And I didn't try to stack it in any way. These are obviously the key considerations that any citizen would have in thinking about the world. And the result, 31,000 votes in just a few hours, 5% say Putin, 95% say Biden. Now, I'm not saying my audience is sort of representative of the country, but I do think it's revealing that a large number of people think that Biden is a greater threat to our way of life and to freedom itself. And to us, this is the point, that we're not talking about the welfare of people in Ukraine. We're talking about the welfare of people right here in the United States. The other thing that can't be avoided is that we seem to be fighting Russia while sort of becoming the Soviet Union. And what I mean by that is that we're establishing a regime of intolerance toward the Russians, but also toward our own citizens that cannot be missed. And this is happening not just in the United States, it's happening also in Europe. Here's a little a headline that is from the domain of sports that kind of illustrates the point, I think, in a stark way. Daniil Medvedev, we're now talking about the number 2 tennis player in the world, By the way, the number one tennis player in the world, Djokovic, is already sort of excommunicated because he won't go along with the COVID guidelines. He refuses to be vaccinated. He can't play in the tournament. And he was out of the Australian Open for this reason. Well, here we go. Daniil Medvedev is told that he will be banned from Wimbledon unless he denounces Vladimir Putin. What? This thorough politicization of art and literature and sports, this is itself a Soviet tactic. And I'm almost thinking to myself, well, you know what, with this kind of madness, Djokovic, you're out because of COVID. Medvedev, you're out because you won't say the right things about Putin. I mean, it turns these international tennis tournaments into kind of a joke. It's almost as if Djokovic should tell Medvedev, hey, listen, while Wimbledon's going on, why don't you and I play 3 matches against each other? This will be the real world championship, and Wimbledon is going to be sort of a sideshow where every sort of second and third rater and also ran can play against each other. Now, we have to make a distinction between Putin and the ordinary Russian. This is another distinction. I mentioned this yesterday that's getting completely lost. To go after Russian citizens and basically say, hey, listen, you can't do banking, you can't travel, we're going to destroy your livelihood all over the world. You can't even enter your pets into international pet competitions. Again, what does this reflect if not the exact tyrannical streak that we're identifying in Putin? So yeah, I'm against the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I think we should help the Ukraine to resist it. But I think in trying to fight Putin's tyranny, we got to avoid the risk of resembling it.